think for the first time in a long time, you're going to see a generational shift in American governance and leadership. The U.S. government, at its core foundational thesis, has been decentralized. The traditional American ethos has been to pioneer and innovate and be self-reliant. So just from the introduction of GPUs, we introduced GPUs in last year, August. And today our revenue on a year-over-year basis gained by 1,700%. People are realizing that, hey, Akash, utilization being so high, we can put our supply here and have confidence it'll go.
This episode is brought to you by Polygon Labs. They're building the AG layer, which creates serious network effects for builders. Don't worry about bootstrapping liquidity, just build anywhere in the AG layer to tap into the liquidity and users from any other aggregated chain. Visit polygon.technology/grants to apply for funding today.
I saw you in a picture with Vivek on Twitter recently, so I think very highly of him, but what's the story behind that picture? When was it? Where was it?
It's too early to say anything meaningful.
Okay.
For that way. But what I can tell you is the work we've been doing when it comes to regulatory clarity has been showing results, right? So we work very closely with Tom Emmer's team, who's the Republican majority whip, and the entire Republican, caucus. But there's a lot of effort that happens with the Democrats as well. So we saw enormous success with FIT 21 being passed last year. FIT 21 is the first bill that clarifies or that essentially establishes crypto as a commodity rather than what it is being treated as a security. So that shifts the jurisdiction from SEC to CFTC. Now, this is better because, you don't have, restrictions that securities have. You do have other restrictions, but I think being treated as a commodity is much better way to look at these crypto tokens because, they shouldn't be at least security wherein the value of the token comes overwhelmingly from an individual company effort or a collective group of coordinated individuals that is adding value to the crypto token, right? So this bill clarifies what that looks like. And I guess it's such a incredible progress in terms of where we are with regular legislative landscape. So we work quite a lot with the Republican caucus, but also now now we have the White House, and looks like the Republicans won the House as well. So we got both White House, Senate, and the House. Last time this happened was Trump's first term, 2016. It was not very pro-crypto then, but now looking at Stand with Crypto, looking at, all the election results, overwhelmingly we have a crypto support. So now the question is, what do we do?
Yeah.
How do we solidify? I think we got once in a lifetime chance to make sure we can add a lasting impact on industry, but also come up with legislation that is fair and workable, right? So I'm not denying that we have securities. Like a lot of times when you look at closed source software, that is masquerading as DePIN or DeFi, that is a security because the writing of the software depends on a single company. And the software is controlled by a single company. There's nowhere in hell anyone outside the company can contribute to the software. And that's clearly a security, right? Where if you have an open source software with tangible contributors, that's also important, not just open source. You have to have contributions come from parties that are not colluding or they don't know each other, right? That's what a definition of a commodity is. Like, for example, you dig gold, you don't need to talk to someone else to dig gold. If you find gold, you dig gold. Same thing with coal, right? You find coal, you dig gold. You don't need to work with the coal creator or, things of that nature, right? That's what a commodity is. A commodity is something that you don't have to depend on a single individual or a company to give us value. So, so crypto tokens should be, commodities and working towards that. And then you have these bad actors that we have to deal with. Like, that's why I'm so anti closed source. That's why I'm so anti, centralization, because we fight so hard to get that position. And the only way we're going to get the position is we can prove that crypto tokens are not securities. And too often than not, we forget the battle and get too carried away with the market forces and just do whatever works for us. And usually whatever works for us is detrimental to the bigger effort, right? So the Trump administration is very, very pro crypto now. They're very pro Bitcoin. Vivek and JD and a lot of the new members of the cabinet are younger generation. They like crypto. And what I like about the incoming administration is, I think for the first time in a long time, you're going to see a generational shift in American governance and leadership
Yeah.
that we did not have. I mean, truth be told, Elizabeth Warrens of the world, all these like older, legislators or people in power do not understand crypto. So I think it's a great opportunity for us now that we have new leadership that's incoming
Yeah.
as younger.
It feels like an absolute watershed moment for sure. And I appreciate that you and a bunch of other crypto founders I've seen have been in Washington and have been speaking to regulators and legislators about all this stuff. I think it's really important. And it feels like now is the time to kind of push the edge of the momentum that we have. And I think a lot of good will be done over the next, 4 years and hopefully beyond. But speaking to that more broadly, like, I think especially crypto Twitter, but also just kind of tech Twitter and business Twitter, I think everyone's pretty euphoric about the Trump win, about a lot of the things he said he will do. Like the Department of Government Efficiency is a concept that seems to be real and like has never been proposed or had any like progress towards in the past, having Gensler out, strategic national Bitcoin reserve potentially. So with all of these things, some of which are for sure going to happen, already have, some of which are kind of, I think we're hoping for a bit more. But do you think, crypto Twitter, business Twitter is over or underrating kind of the impact the next 4 years will have on tech and business and crypto in the US? And then why?
It's underrating the impact.
Really?
I don't think we fully understood what a US government adoption of crypto is going to look like. Like, US government at its core foundational thesis has been decentralization, right? So the entire notion that we have these states and these states come together as a federation, but independently recognized as republics. And even under which the traditional American ethos has been to pioneer and innovate and be self-reliant. The only way that's possible for small communities to spread across, vast lands of the new West was to have decentralized systems, right? So we have these core principles, core governance principles. We take that and export that to the small communities. And that's why we have property taxes that work really well compared to federal or state taxes, right? We can see property taxes actually at play. America foundationally has been decentralized, and not somehow, but, I think I would say like really after Civil War, we started getting hyper-centralized for myriads of reasons. If you look at pre-Civil War and post-Civil War, and every time there's an adversity like the Depression or the World Wars or the Civil Wars, we see overwhelming centralization that happened, especially with the federal government taking a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see it coming back after this crisis is over, right? So series of those crises led to what we have today, which is very inefficient, structure. And I'm really excited what DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, is going to propose because, America was great for the longest time. We didn't need such a massive federal budget. So looking at it, I think decentralization can be applied in several aspects of it. Like we saw some amount of crypto adoption in the US government, like, a few years ago. We saw Department of Defense experiment with Akash internally, where they have 9 different agencies with different data centers, and each of the agencies has so much unused capacity. They thought, hey, what if we bring all the capacity together and offer to the DoD as a single DoD cloud using Akash? That won, like, there was a hackathon that won the second and first prize for combat readiness. I can't remember what category. There is a Marine Corps officer, his name is Anthony Rosa, who went on public record talking about how they implemented Akash internally. And last I heard was the project went up to DoD, went up to CIA. We never heard from there. Oh, sorry, it's NSA, and we never heard back.
They're still
But,
using it. They just won't tell anyone.
It's open source, right? We don't
Yeah.
know. They're not using Akash Network. They're using Akash fork internally. You cannot use,
Oh,
DoD
okay.
cannot use an external cloud, right?
Okay. Right.
Even if they use Akash Network, there's no way to know.
Right.
But the point is, like, there's effort. Like, DoD, I consider to be the most, out of all the government agencies and departments, to be the most efficient and least amount of bullshit, because it's defense, right? Now, efficiency is questionable, how much they spend, what not, but at least compared to other departments, I would say. And the most, like, they don't need to BS anybody. They don't need to, play the bureaucratic games. It's war, right? War is, like, very different. So there's some amount of, like, interest in crypto. I think this DOGE is just gonna, like, accelerate how we can use decentralized systems in governments, because you can't imagine having your votes on a on a, like, immutable ledger. Imagine having public records written on immutable ledgers. Imagine the kind of efficiency gains we're going to get, but not having to worry and maintain security. There's a lot of amazing benefits I think crypto can provide you as government. I think it's going to be a great time for crypto to really shine.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I hadn't thought about is not even like cryptocurrency adoption, but like decentralized tech adoption as a means to lower costs and make things more efficient in the government through the Department of Government Efficiency is a cool thing to think about and something I definitely hope I see happen.
Yeah, like, think about the process to get your birth certificate, the amount of costs that's involved.
Yeah.
And think about simple things of that nature. Like, what if we have all public records on immutable ledger, easily traversable, easily maintainable, and anyone that can verify, imagine using, ZKs, or imagine using all this new tech that we have at hand to run government. The kind of cost savings you're gonna hit is enormous, right?
Yeah.
The biggest cost in securing data is securing data. It's not the data. It's not storing the data. It's securing the data.
Right.
The indemnity, the insurance that you pay is a lot of gains that I think we're going to be able to get out. I'm skeptical because U.S. government is such a massive beast. Like, I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. Optimistic because people that are leading this effort is Elon Musk. It's proven track record that he is good at taking on massive challenges and solving them.
Yeah.
Vivek's performance is not yet known, so that's questionable. So I'm optimistic just based on the team that they put together. I'm cautious because it is a U.S. government,
For sure.
and none of these guys have experience working with the U.S. government. I barely do. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. And so we talked about kind of crypto regulation and what you hope to see there in terms of FIT 21 and in terms of truly decentralized crypto projects and their tokens being treated as securities or as commodities, not securities. What about on the other side of the coin in terms of AI regulation? Like what are you hoping to see there in terms of frameworks or things passed, laws passed that help open
right
AI flourish?
So I want AI regulation. I don't need additional regulation for AI. We have, it's similar to internet, similar to any new technology we regulate. It's not regulating AI that's important. It's regulating what AI produces that matters, right? For example, if I ask AI to design a new weapon, right? That's ATF that has regulation on weapons, right? If I ask AI to design a new medicine, that's FDA that has regulation over the medicine. It's not the process to create the medicine that should be regulated. It is the output that the process, produces that should be regulated, right? I don't want AI to be, I don't want us to ban creating images, politically incorrect images. But, because political speech is not illegal in US. But if you start banning like producing images, then you got to ban art. Then you got to ban paintbrushes. It's just a better paintbrush. So the best regulation is no regulation for AI, in my opinion. It's not AI that is bad or good. It's a technology, right? It should not be. It should not. It doesn't have moral compass. It is a paintbrush at best. It's a better paintbrush, right? A better pen, right?
Right.
It is what we do with it. So I mean, I'm taking quite a lot. I mean, speak to quite a lot of nation states. I was in Dubai the other day. I was speaking to the Prime Minister's office on how they regulated AI, because Dubai seems to have the most advanced regulatory framework for machine learning and AI. They have a ministry of AI. I think Dubai government or UAE government is the only government that trained an LLM that is considered state of the art. They trained Falcon 7B Instruct, which at that time was amazing, right? It was state of the art open source LLM. So they're very forward thinking. They also host a world government summit, I think it's called. I mean, that's considered to be the number one like emerging technologies summit for governments, right? So they're forefront of regulation. So there are a lot of examples we can take in the wild that we can incorporate in the American regulatory system. And all of them have taken a low touch approach. And so far, the danger we face in American regulatory and legislative landscape when it comes to AI is bad actors trying to impose regulatory arbitrage, right?
Yeah.
Big companies like OpenAI and Microsoft and Google's of the world are going and lobbying heavily and proposing that we ban open source AI because it's in their best interest. Of course, they're not going out with their messages. They're going out with the message saying that if you open source AI, China is going to steal our AI, or you're going to have our American adversaries that are going to gain advantage because of AI. And scare tactics, classic, right? To make sure that they are the only ones with AI and no one else can get. So they're playing this dirty game. It's very important for us to counter those efforts, and that's why we spend quite a lot of time, convincing or educating legislators. I met I met every powerful committee you can meet. I met the committee for trade and finance, which has jurisdiction over AI and FTC and whatnot. That is the primary committee. It's a bipartisan committee, very powerful. It's funny enough because in the meeting I was there, introduced myself as Greg from Akash, and they knew what Akash was. They were like, "Yeah, we love Akash
That's
because
good.
it's intersection of DePIN and AI." They knew what the word DePIN.
Let's
So
go.
they're paying attention. They're not. I know it's kind of crazy to hear from a legislator on DePIN, and this is one of the most powerful. I think it's like a third most powerful committee right after the appropriations and the defense committee. The trade committee, right? So it's a very powerful committee. They're very, very well in tune with open source, with decentralization. They know Akash, they know these protocols. So they're very aware what's happening. I was very surprised how educated they were. I mean, I thought we're going to be like having to educate them quite a lot. So, and most of them, the consensus is they're going to take a very soft touch approach unless there is concrete damage that one can point out because of AI that occurred. Then we're going to look at how we regulate. But I was talking to quite a lot of like operators as well in the Defense Department and State Department, and all of them are the consensus. What I really like that came out of this conversations is they want to develop action plans, response mechanisms rather than regulation. So they want to be like, okay, what if we have classic example, I mean, Defense Department, the biggest scare if you talk to anybody would be like swarm of drones connected by an AI. What happens when you have like swarms of drones that are controlled by AI that come and like attack our cities, right? You can imagine like 10,000 drones, like with like small bombs. We saw that. We saw what happened with in Ukraine, right? So it's like small drones with like with like charges on them. So things of that nature, people are very afraid. Like, how do we combat stuff like that? Using AI, using counter AI, right? So, but overwhelming. But they're not going to ban AI. They're going to develop countermeasures to offset some of these risks, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm very positive, and so far the discussions have been very good. I mean, you just need to, keep in mind that this closed AI is working very hard to shut down open source AI, and that's a battle.
Yeah, it's a real tragedy that they named the company OpenAI, right? Because it gets confusing
I know.
whenever. It's a bit
Nothing
of
open about it.
a misnomer. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, besides politics and regulation, what other major trends or tailwinds do you see exerting a real influence on the world around us today? And maybe we start with AI and all the compute and power that its training is going to use, or maybe we take a different kind of trend that you want to pick. But either way, just curious how you see the world developing.
Yeah, so I think let's understand what's happening right now with LLMs, with like advancement AI, right? So we look at today, as LLMs get larger and larger and larger, the amount of energy they consume also goes in proportion to the size of the LLM that's being trained. So, and the growth of energy needed every year is about half an order of magnitude. That means every year we are 5xing the amount of energy we need to develop the state-of-the-art models for that year, right? I believe GPT-3, 3.5 at least was trained on, correct me if I'm wrong, possibly GPT-4 was trained on a 10 megawatt data center. And most hyperscalers are like 40 megawatt, 50 megawatt data centers, right? And a 50 megawatt is a very large data center. So in the US, we have about 1,000 hyperscale data centers. Half of them have 50 megawatt capacity. It's not very easy to get a 50 megawatt capacity. So, so a dedicated AI data center with 50 megawatt capacity is in Memphis, Tennessee, which is owned by X. And the rumor is, I mean, again, this is it's what I hear say. I had to confirm it, but what I heard that they're actually burning diesel to power the data center because it's very, very hard to get a 50 megawatt energy source, even till today. So by that math, the next version of the next big LLM will need 250 megawatt data center, right? And a year after that is going to be 1.2 gigawatt data center. And the only place to get 1.2 gigawatts of capacity is a nuclear reactor.
Yep.
So in 2 years, we're going to need a nuclear reactor to train the most powerful state-of-the-art model. And I think that is a huge bottleneck we don't talk much about. Why? Because it's not easy to build a nuclear reactor, both in terms of complexity, time as well as budget, right? In the US, the last nuclear reactor we built was in Georgia, that opened in 2013, I believe. And it costed about $32 billion and about 14 years to build. Optimistically, one can say you can build a nuclear reactor in 7 years, but that's still waiting for 7 years. Even if you start the process now, it's going to take 5 more years, 5 more years after we cap out how much we can get from a single data center. In the US, we have about 59 nuclear power plants. These power plants are used fully for about 93% of the time. So they're very, very efficiently used, facilities. So what that means is like, okay, if you cap out of how much you can get in a single data center in about 2 years, what are your alternatives, right? So your alternatives are go to a bunch of smaller data centers that can come together and federate and train. Now, that traditionally hasn't been possible because, traditionally it's been co-located GPUs in a single location that's connected with a high bandwidth networking with low latency to communicate, right? That was a traditional way you train the models, but that changed about 2 months ago. 2 months ago, company called News Research introduced a framework called Distro to train models using heterogeneous compute over the internet. What that means is, instead of relying on homogeneous compute, meaning if you train on H100s, you need only H100s. If you train on A100s, you can only do the entire training job on A100s. You cannot mix and match.
Yeah.
And all these GPUs need to be connected, right, locally. But with this model, you can train on any GPU. It could be an A100 cluster, it could be H100 cluster, it could be 4090 cluster, it doesn't really matter, all connected over the internet. And that's a big deal because if you don't need them to be local, you can now distribute your energy supply from anyone that can contribute the energy supply. It could be a home, it could be a data center, it could be a garage for all I care, right? As long as it can participate in a training run, it can essentially contribute. That's a big innovation. And we saw Prime Intellect, another company that did Open Dialoco, that did a 10 billion parameter model. And Noose was a billion parameter model. A 10 billion parameter model is somewhere in between GPT-2 and GPT-3. GPT-3 is about 175 billion parameters, right? So we're in the GPT-2 to GPT-3 level of advancement when it comes to distributed AI or distributed training. And what I heard from the grapevine is we're going to have a 100 billion parameter model that's going to begin training in the next few months, even before the end of the year. And after that, we're going to have a 500 billion and a trillion. GPT-4 is a trillion parameter model. So it's only a few generations we're away in the distributed training, and that's catching up really quick. The only limitation is incentives, and crypto is phenomenal at devising incentives. There's also like innovation happening in the business model as well, because a cool thing about open source AI is, well, things are free. But the downside is, well, why would I build an open source model if I have to give it out for free? What is as a model creator and trainer, what is my return on this massive investment I need to make? So now there are systems that are being developed where it's still open source, the model is open source, but the weights are not open source, and weights are available to the folks that contribute compute. So if I participate in a training run for a 100 billion parameter model, if I give my compute, I get some token that represents my ownership of the model. That can be, I can use the ownership to use inference. So inference will be always paid. Inference is how you make money. Training is how you spend money, I suppose.
Yeah.
During inference time, my ownership will give me some share of the profit or something. So that way, it's fully open source. It's owned by the people that built it, and that ownership could be tradable. I can sell that as an NFT somewhere, right? So a lot of this happening in the decentralized AI space. And I think 2025 mid, I would say, post ICML. ICML is a large AI conference we're going to have in Vancouver every year. Post ICML, we're going to see the DEI summer. That's when you're going to see all these like fun stuff, the tokenized ownership. We're going to see like fully open source usable models. We're going to see quite a lot of like innovation that's happening right now. And a lot of the companies that are been working very hard when it comes to verifiable training, verifiable inference, all that will have some product that's demonstratable. I think 2025 mid is when we take main stage for AI. The DAI will become the main stage AI. And looking at the papers that are being submitted at ICML, they're extremely fascinating. So that's my general take. I think we don't pay enough attention to the energy bottlenecks. We just keep assuming these models are going to get larger and larger, but where do we get the power from?
For
Right?
sure.
Like only place you can get the power is China. And that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so only China can build a nuclear reactor in 3 years. They've done it.
Yeah.
And US is not that competitive anymore, sadly.
True that. Yeah, you heard it here first, DAI summer 2025. I think Jake from CoinFund said something similar. But yeah, let's talk about Akash now. So, I mean, the way I describe DePIN to people that aren't familiar at all with crypto a lot of times is basically it's trying to bring innovation to these markets that are huge, like energy and telecom and compute, but are also oligopolies. So there's only a few kind of providers for that service, right? In telecom, there's 3 MNOs in the US. In the kind of AI industry, there's those few big names that we mentioned that are trying to close source and close sourcing the models. So the way I would look at, Akash is like basically trying to bring about the advent of decentralized AI and bring more providers for a good of service to the market. So it's less of an oligopoly, and OpenAI and those companies have less control over the market and pricing and models and everything else. But how would you describe kind of how Akash fits into the AI supply chain and what it's doing to bring decentralized AI to fruition?
Right. So DePIN, like you said, it's I would say like a loose effort or a loose category in crypto that focuses on disrupting industries that are very hard to disrupt, usually because they have a moat when it comes to supply, right? So DePIN is phenomenal in breaking that moat and phenomenal when it comes to bootstrapping, you know, whatever supply in the market, in the two-sided market is playing, right? Be it wireless, be it compute, be it, energy, electricity, be it any possible old arcane industries that are very hard to disrupt, DePIN is disruptive. And that's a big deal because that's really what crypto originally promised, right? Like Bitcoin disrupted finance and money, which, US dollar had the monopoly on money for the long part, and challenged that monopoly, which people never thought was possible, in a way that people never imagined would be real, right? Decentralization, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, right? And the idea is like, what if we can leverage what Bitcoin brought to the table with money with other industries? That's been the dream since the beginning of Bitcoin. As a matter of fact, since the beginning of time when we realized this thing called blockchain is phenomenal, right? And finally, we were able to realize. So along the way, we created DeFi, we created NFTs, meme coins. All those are, some of my opinion side effects of this decentralization. But the real value of decentralization is improving industries, right? Improving industries that are very hard to improve. So in that aspect, every layer of infrastructure and foundational today, if you look at cloud as the fabric that holds our modern society together, right? Without cloud, there is this podcast that wouldn't happen. There is effectively every message and every interaction we see today with the outside world happens to the cloud, right? It is such a fundamental part of our existence, and we all of us as a society pay something like cloud tax without even realizing we're paying a cloud tax, right? 50% of every single penny you pay for online services goes to a cloud provider. That is not elected, that is not selected, that is there because the users really don't have too much options at this point. So what Akash is decentralizing is this invisible layer that has such an incredible hold on us as a society, as collective, and making that layer more transparent and more accessible. How do we make it accessible? By tapping into traditionally untappable resources. Like there's a lot of compute available, be it locked away in companies that are not cloud, companies, but they're just companies using the cloud or having a bunch of data centers, be it in homes, be it in devices, be it wherever compute is available. Akash's mission is to unlock the compute and bring that to a market that can be easily consumed in a safe and a secure way, right? So the biggest bottleneck today we see with AI, not today, but we wrote in a white paper talking about machine learning in 2018. We said, look, the cost of machine learning as the data increases is increasing exponentially, right? This has been a trend for a long time. And fortunately, ChatGPT came in 2023 and really showed what's possible with GPT-3 and generative AI. That created an that made people realize that demand for AI is going to be exponential. And that in exchange created this shortage of GPUs. And Akash, was fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. We were working on it for a long time. And that helped us quite a lot to get our demand up. And if you look at our progress, right? So just from the introduction of GPUs, we introduced GPUs in last year, August. And today our revenue on a year-over-year basis gained by 1,700%, right? Our earnings. This month alone, we grew 100% in terms of earnings compared to last month, right? So it's very clear that there is product market fit. There's clear demand for these services, and we did it without taking shortcuts, being open source, being decentralized. You know, it is a fully, uh, uh, it is a design. It is a system that was designed in 2020. Is exactly the same way, right? Of course, the system gets better and better, but the foundations of like self-custody and permissionlessness and openness and the self-sovereignty, all that stay intact, right? Um, so that means there's clear demand for a product that offers this way, and there's clear demand for so many other aspects. We see energy, we see with helium, we see bandwidth with helium. There's clear demand. I mean, helium is in 8-figure now. Run rate, right? Annual. I mean, that is meaningful. I don't think people pay attention to how amazingly valuable these services are growing. Geo.net and HiveMapper and a whole lot of things, right? So, yeah. So I'm particularly excited. I think like DePIN, and when I talk to regulators and legislators, DePIN is the only sector they take very serious. Most of them don't really care about NFTs. I understand to a degree, but I can't pinpoint and say the NFTs are valuable for X, Y, Z reasons. I can't quantitatively tell you why NFTs are important, right? I can tell you quantitatively, hey, Akash is important because, well, you pay $1 for H100 where you pay $4 on Amazon. That's very quantifiable. Helium, same thing. You pay $10 a month versus $100.
Yeah.
I can quantify the value in a statement that's simple and easy to understand. I can't do that with NFTs and meme coins, right?
It's true.
So DeFi, I mean, DePIN in a way is a savior to crypto, because when you go talk about crypto to outsiders, most of them don't understand what DeFi is, because like most of them don't understand, like it's fairly clear, right? I mean, try to explain DeFi to people that have some means, that are wealthy. They're like, hey, whatever you're explaining, I can do that easily with my current finance. In fact, it's cheaper. It's easier.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
No one can pinpoint and be like, why do I need to use a lending market on crypto where I can easily have a Chase Bank lend me based on my collateral? Right? Yeah, it's faster to a degree. But when it comes to money, people don't like fast. They like slow. Anyway, it's just, there's a lot of these things, right? But with DePIN, I can be like, hey, you want GPUs? You can get GPUs anywhere, but hey, how about come to Akash, get GPU? That people understand. Like, hey,
For
you
sure.
want $10 mobile plan? That people understand. Right? So I think
Yeah.
DePIN is a savior to crypto. I think we don't talk much about it.
It will be talked about more over the next year, I think, for sure. So yeah, you mentioned that a bit, but your revenue has really skyrocketed recently. And I would even say you're supply constrained at this point. So I think you're 80, 90, 95% kind of utilization rate, depending on the type of GPU that you guys have on your network. So what's the plan? I've seen some protocol proposals to allocate some more incentives to get GPU supply on, but like, what's the plan to just get more supply to service all the demand that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I wanted to keep first principles intact of demand supply. So first principle says that if you have demand, you can get supply, generally speaking. Like if you walk into a store and the store shelves are empty, if I'm a supplier, if I walk into Walmart and be like, I'm supplying soaps, I look at the soap section, all the soaps are empty, I would want my soap there because, they're going fast. So the supplier, it's very attractive to see high utilization or if I can sell my product easy. So we are seeing slowly, but people are realizing that, hey, Akash, demand is pretty much utilization being so high, we can put our supply here and have confidence it'll rent. So, but it's going to take some time for people to realize, and I want to keep it very, very organic. And I understand it's a big wish to be organic. So we want to sweeten up the deal a little bit with incentives. Ideally, we want to have on-chain incentives that will drive the supply. But even before we go on chain, we want to understand what does the distribution curve look like. how many incentives should we offer that's the right amount of incentives, considering we have high demand, right? So instead of taking a blind approach like other DP networks where they incentivize left and right, and then you just end up with enormous amount of supply uh, that is not sold, and that hurts the market dynamics, and that makes them less attractive to suppliers. Like if suppliers come to Akash and be like, hey, you only have 30% utilization, that means in their mind, you only will be able to sell 30% of the time.
Yeah.
So that is not very attractive, right? So how do you design a system? And Akash is a very unique case, but because, because our utilization is very high, and it took a very long time to get here. It's not something we woke up and be like, hey, one day, and we launched and everything just went crazy, right? You saw our progress over the years, and it's been like small increments every day, consistent small increments that got us to here, right? And most days at least. And most products, when you look at adoption curves, is never like this. Very rarely you'll see like this. It's usually like this and this, and that inflection point is usually some feature you shipped, some feature could be some of the dumbest features will give you the biggest advantage. I mean, it's always how it works, right? Like we shipped credit cards recently, and that gave us all this adoption. Just removing the barrier for people to use or get AKT to use Akash was such a big deal that our activation rate jumped from 0.5% to 75%. But it's technically not a complicated feature. It is not, I mean, credit cards, it's not that complex, but from an impact standpoint, had enormous impact. And the challenge was doing it without compromising self-custody. That took a while for us to figure out how to do that. It's not putting a credit card in, like, if we were allowed to accept credit cards and give AKD tokens in exchange by law, that we would have done that on day one. Unfortunately, U.S. law prohibits selling tokens directly to your customers, to use a product. So if crypto businesses are operating with their hands tied, because you cannot technically sell tokens using a credit card to a customer that wants to use a product. And if your product cannot run without the token, like Akash does, it's very, very hard to get users to buy tokens. Unless there's an immediate, like, if you're buying, DeFi has an incredible like approach because it's immediately gratifying moment, right? You can immediately see that, look, if I put like $1, it goes up or down, whatever, right? You still have this like immediate thing. Whereas in compute, it's like, unless you have a dire need, you're not going to go out. And a lot of people went out of the way to get the tokens because the demand for AI was so high last year. As the demand sort of like, or the supply chain started easing out because NVIDIA quadrupled their production from, I guess, 500 H100s to 2 million H100s this year. They made 500,000 H100s and 2 million this year. So that eased the supply chain a little bit. But so when supply chain is a little bit eased, people are going to go for the least, like, easiest option, right? Anyway, the point is with once we solve that feature, our demand went up super high, and now if you use incentives in a wrong way, the demand or the utilization is going to be lower because supply is going to be higher, and that is bad for the marketplace. So it's very, very challenging to design this, but we're getting very close. We're understanding, like, and a lot of times our understanding, and the reason why we want to do this incentives in a pilot, because we want to understand our providers better in terms of how they want to supply. And we also want to understand what are different challenges, right? So we see quite a lot of challenges on the provider side. A lot of times they may provide the right amount of chip, the right kind of chip, but they may not have the right amount of energy. So the chip is running on half energy, you're going to be slower. They may not have the right disk. If chip is like great chip, but not so great disk, how you take checkpoints when you're training. They may not have the right bandwidth. They may not have the right personnel, the right sort of like response times to change disks. They may not. There are like so many aspects of running a data center that if you put blind incentives and you're just checking for the chip, you're not checking for all these other aspects, right? So That's why we want to do this incentives and a pilot. So we get all this data and we can design our on-chain program that checks for all these different non-chip aspects of a deployment. So we can deliver something of high quality. And the reason why Akash is utilized is because it's not just a chip; it's the high quality data center, right? And people can rely on Akash and get the quality that they're looking for. And it's very important to maintain the quality, because if you drop the quality, you drop the user, and then it's very hard to get the user back. So a lot of aspects of incentivization that just goes beyond chips that people don't realize. Akash is a full-on cloud. It's not just a GPU market.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And from a
The
very,
ultimate goal is to go on-chain incentives, and that's coming very soon.
Yeah.
And part of that is verification, not for chips. That's the easy part, but verification for the other stuff that's not chips. That's the hard part. It's really hard part.
That's one of the big unsolved mysteries in DePIN is the real world verification aspect. There's a lot of different approaches for it, but I mean, that's great. You guys are supply constrained. It's great you have a plan to get more supply online with incentives, but from a very, very high level, what's the onboarding process like for a data center or a business that owns a bunch of GPUs to come onto the network?
So you can go to akash.network/providers, and there's like detailed overview there, but generally involves you having a data center, you having compute in the data center with the chips, and you installing Linux and Kubernetes on top of it, and you install the Akash provider daemon inside a Kubernetes installation, and that instantly becomes a node on the network. It's very straightforward. Of course, there's a process of setting up wallet and setting up your permissions and whatnot, but it's fairly straightforward. That said, there's a difference between a okay data center and there's a difference between a great data center. Great data centers are like, they have observability, they have fault tolerance. I mean, Kubernetes by default has fault tolerance, but also you can write additional fault tolerance on top of your standard out of the box fault tolerance. And there's aspects of moderation, like how do you prevent bad actors that could abuse your system potentially? How do you deal with bad actors? And once you put something on the internet, there's always going to be bad people, right? So accounting for that, there's so many aspects. I mean, there's this, then getting it audited, right? If you're someone like, if you are a HIPAA compliant or a SOC compliant data center, and if you want to attract HIPAA workloads that need HIPAA compliance, you need to get audited by an auditor with an Akash network, and that takes some time, right?
Right.
So things of that nature, to get up and running, it's like pretty straightforward, but to really deliver a high quality, a highly capable data center, that takes a few days, because there are all these like aspects of setting up your node. So it really depends. There's no straight answer, but all that is documented. It's not something that you had to go figure out.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's easier than I would have expected. So that's good to hear. Last question real quick is, you guys are, I think, between $1 and $2 million of ARR. So you might not know because it's a permissionless, truly decentralized network, but do you have an idea of where that's coming from in terms of like types of customer profiles or use cases or that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we only know what people tell us, and you'd be surprised how little I know, because I go on Twitter and be like, hey, look, there's like an agents running on Akash, and somebody tweeted the other day, I'm like, there have been agents running on Akash from a long time. And they pointed out, like, it's like the more you know, if you know kind of thing, right?
Right.
And I know who uses Akash to some degree because some people complain, and when people complain, it's a good thing because they care. So the people that complain the most, I can tell, it's not complaining in the sense like they want some new capabilities. There's always this beautiful feedback we get back from people that use it.
Just power users. Yeah.
Power users. They always, it's a good thing because, there's no way to know. I'm not I'm a user, but I'm not a power user of Akash.
Yeah.
In order for me to be a power user, I had to develop something that's not Akash so I can use Akash for really. Unfortunately, my time is all spent on Akash.
For sure.
Now, once in a while, I'll build something that I'll use Akash, but not in a full-time, every day I'm using Akash kind of thing, right? I want to, but, that's the curse of like, the idea is like, I got to build something else. It's not Akash to use Akash.
Yeah.
So power users, we have NSAI, which is one of the most power users, and I think Akash. They use quite a lot, perhaps in a few thousands of dollars per day. I would imagine. I mean, we don't exactly know how much, but because they run almost all the LLMs on Akash. And Eric Voorhees was on a broadcast the other day. He said
Saw
Akash is
that.
their most used,
Yeah.
most used provider. We have universities, quite a lot of universities. I think they're using like 1 or 2 chips per student that is being used at Akash. We have Prime Intellect, which is selling quite a lot of workloads. Since they started their training run, I think people are using Akash to participate in the training run because Akash compute is cheap. Like Intellect 1 is being trained, right? I mean, we have news research that uses Akash quite a lot for both experimentation. I think they have a new model that they're being trained now. We have quite a lot of non-AI workloads for rendering that's being used. I think Passage is doing some cloud rendering. Akash also is pretty good. It's cloud rendering is I think is going to be another phenomenal, like underexplored use case. Cloud rendering, for those of you that don't know, is using a GPU from a different computer to deliver high quality graphics on your local computer. Like I have a Mac and I want to play a high quality game on my Mac, but I don't have the 4090 GPU on my Mac. I have okay GPUs, but not the good ones, right? I can use the GPU on a Akash to do the rendering and get the output onto my local. So there are a few games that are being built right now that I like, and there's another talking about gaming is in a company called Neural. They've been using quite a lot. I think they use like 64 A6000s last I heard for developing this like in-game assets, like really high quality in-game assets being developed in Neural. And I think Passage is also using the in-game the assets developed on Neural to power their world. So all kinds of like this beautiful like this asset generative AI asset generation now being built and using different apps, all using Akash. These are some of the things that I can think top of my head as big users. We also have a small ML product that Overclock Labs uses a teeny bit of Akash as well.
Yeah.
I would say like maybe we use last I checked, maybe we use I think like 8 or 16 H100s last I checked on Akash itself. And that's a ML inference as a service that we're developing. Rochester Institute of Technology, University of Texas, we saw quite a lot of, I think RIT is training a new model in Akash. So we see quite a lot. So a lot of these, if you visit on Twitter, if you follow the hashtag called Powered by Akash, you'll see every time when people tweet that they're using Akash, I generally like tag it with Powered by Akash. And I see there's quite a lot of examples out there.
100%. Well, I know you got to run. Where would you like to direct our audience to on the internet to find more, or any kind of call to action you have for them?
Yeah, Greg Osuri. I mean, I'm pretty active. I talk a lot about Akash on Twitter. My handle is Greg Osuri, GregOsuri. Call to action. I think like we're looking for developers, to build Akash, not work on Akash, not build on Akash. I think we have pretty good demand, but I think just build on Akash, build Akash, right? This is a on-chain fund, a community pool that's tens of millions now, that's dedicated for progressing Akash as an ecosystem. If you want to build on Akash, be it a client, an idea, just reach out to me. Happy to guide you, fund you. I think we're looking for more innovators that can take Akash and like build different flavors on top of Akash. What they want to do. That's my biggest ask from the community.
Sweet. Well, Greg, thanks for coming on. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Connor.